Welcome to another episode of Talking About Records. My name is G.I. Sanders from NTX Vinyl, small chain of independent record shops in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. If you're not local, you can shop online at ntxvinyl.com. We ship anywhere in the United States. Please follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and subscribe here on YouTube. Really appreciate that. Today's topic, the best places to buy used vinyl records. If you're a longtime collector like myself, maybe this feels like table stakes. You're like, obviously I know where to buy used vinyl records. I've been doing it a long time. But there's a lot of people who maybe don't know where to buy used or vintage or secondhand records because maybe they've only known, going into a Walmart or a Target and buying new records. So how do you get into understanding where to buy used records? And how can you trust the seller of a used record, right? It's a lot different of an experience than if you're buying something new off the shelf and shrink wrap, right? So I'm going to break this into two categories, and that is where to buy offline, which is, in the physical world, and then where to buy online, a lot of options there as well. So first and foremost, if you're talking about where to buy records in the physical world, the number one place is obviously your local record shop. Like, I hope I don't have to say that, but the reality is, people may not think about that. If you're, again, a new collector, you're just getting into this and you've only seen what, your local big box store has, or maybe you've only shopped online and you just hadn't thought like, man, maybe there is an actual record store. Maybe it's not right around you, but maybe within driving distance. So definitely look around. Go to Google, search for record stores near me. If you use the Discogs app, there's a nice little tab there where it'll surface a lot of record stores in your area as well. So that's the first place to go. Undoubtedly, because not only will they have most likely the best inventory, but you're going to buy from someone in most cases who is knowledgeable about records, and that's very important because when it comes to acquiring inventory or grading records and pricing records, all of those things come natural to a record store owner, assuming they know what they're doing, of course. So that being said, maybe you do have a local record store, but they don't stock what you're into. Maybe they don't stock the genre, maybe they don't refresh their inventory enough. And so you might be looking for other options. So I've got some other options on this list that maybe would be good for you. And then, of course, you may not have a local record store. You may be in a city where there just isn't one. There aren't that many record stores compared to, back in the 70s and 80s when vinyl was even more popular, right? And so you've got to have some other options, and that's where these secondary options come in. So if you don't have a record store, or even if you do and you want to think outside the box, think about thrift stores, think about antique malls. Anywhere where they sell vintage or used items, records could be there. Now, it's usually going to be up to you to dig through and to find the gems out of the stack, if you will, but that's kind of the same in your local record store, So again, thrift stores, antique malls, places like that. That's actually where I have my NTX Vinyl shops, or in a chain of antique malls. So believe me, you can find great records in those types of locations if you've got them. Again, it's a little hit or miss, no different than anything else, but definitely worth exploring if you've got those in your area. Another option, estate sales. If you've never done estate sales, they can be fun. They can also be a complete beatdown. It really depends on the scenario. So you can, again, go to Google. You can search for estate sales in your area. There's dedicated websites where you can go and put in your address and your zip code, and it'll filter down to estate sales in your area. From there, you can filter down and search for ones that may have vinyl records listed as a part of that estate sale. Now, I will warn you, estate sales in recent years have gotten a lot more competitive, at least where I am in the Dallas-Fort Worth market, which is, a large market. If a big estate sale is announced and it's got a bunch of great pictures being advertised of a record collection, well, you can bet there's going to be a line of collectors waiting, an hour or two before the estate sale opens. Not always, but most of the time. The other thing to keep in mind with estate sales is when you're looking into it, whether you're searching online or maybe you actually see something in your area, you may see a sign that says, estate sale this weekend or whatever. Try and figure out if there's an actual company managing that estate. Most of the time these days there is, or I'd say a lot of the times, at least in my experience, again, in my area. If there is a company who's managing that estate sale, a lot of times you're going to find records that aren't really priced as they should be. What I mean by that is the estate sales know that vinyl records have become collectible again. And so they essentially overprice everything. Now, again, this is not in every case, but I've been to a lot of estate sales in recent years, and I have noticed an influx of higher prices. And that's because, again, they realize that these are collectible. They realize people are waiting in line to get into that house to check them out. And so they've marked them up. That's a little frustrating because they're marketing them kind of at retail price or even higher in some cases. And it's not a retail environment because they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what the inventory is. They don't know if it's, they don't know how to grade it. They don't know how to price it based on that grade. And so, again, it can be a little hit or miss, but it's worth checking out in your area because sometimes it will be a hit and you can find some stuff. You can find maybe a whole collection or a small collection or cherry pick out of a collection, find some really great stuff at great prices. Most of the time that happens if it's an individual running their own estate sale versus one of the larger companies who go in and try and maximize value and again, mark up vinyl records because they're seen as collectible now. So check out estate sales. Again, can definitely be hit or miss, no different than your local shop or your thrift store, but it's worth a dig and it can be a lot of fun. On a similar note, maybe not an estate sale, but what about garage sales? I think, anybody who has ever bought anything at a garage sale knows definitely hit or miss, right? You can walk into a garage sale and find nothing. At the same time, you can score something great and score a great deal. It's no different with records. In fact, one of the best ways I've found to shop at garage sales is you can go up to a garage sale and look around and see maybe there's no records there, but ask the person that's running the garage sale and say, hey, I don't see any records. Do you have any? And they might say, oh, I didn't even think to put those out. That's happened to me more than once. They go inside, they come out with an old box of records from a closet that they haven't looked at in years. They're already in a selling mode because they're having a garage sale or wanting to clean house and wanting to get stuff out that they haven't thought about in a long time. Perfect opportunity to pick up some records cheap. So if you do walk into a garage sale and you don't see anything, always ask. That's really my one tip there. But again, garage sales are going to be hit or miss. A lot of times you're going to find stuff that's damaged or just not desirable from a genre and artist perspective. But it can go the opposite too. You can walk in and find a great collection at a garage sale. So it's really all about how much effort you want to put in regards to your hunt for used vinyl records. Next on the list, this is one I think a lot of people overlook. If you're just, especially if you're just getting into this and you're trying to build a collection, trying to get some, some of the basics as far as classic albums are concerned, stuff that came out, in the 60s, 70s, 60s and 70s and 80s, ask your friends and family. You'd be surprised. Just go to your Facebook or, send some text messages however you connect with your friends and family and just be like, hey, does anybody have any used records they want to get rid of? You'd be surprised. You might have an aunt or an uncle. You might have a friend of a friend who knows a guy who has a bunch of records and he's trying to get rid of them. Because again, records are bulky. They take up space. There's plenty of people who don't want anything to do with them these days because you can stream all the music online. They're inconvenient. Can go on with all of the reasons why someone wouldn't want to deal with records. So there are scenarios out there where you've just got to find them, right? So again, ask your friends, ask your families, let people know that you're collecting and looking for these things, because then you're going to get a lot of people kind of watching out for you. And when they run across something at a garage sale or an estate sale, they may pick it up for you, or they may tell you, hey, you should go over here because I found a bunch. So it's really about just spreading the word and letting people know that you're after these things, because that's going to kind of expand your network and help you actually acquire or get in front of these records wherever they may be, right? On that same note, the last one I'll mention in regards to kind of how to buy used records offline or in the physical world, there's an app called Nextdoor. Nextdoor is basically a social network for your neighborhood. I don't know how prevalent it is. I think in the United States it's pretty prevalent. A lot of neighborhoods have them, and most of the time they're used for crime watch, they're used for, hey, my dog's lost. And it's a pretty localized network of people in your immediate, neighborhood or community who are who interact with this app. It's a great place to ask about records. So go on to Nextdoor and say, hey, I'm just now getting into collecting records. I was curious if anybody had any. I'd love to talk to you about it, right? There's going to be people on your street, in your neighborhood, within a couple blocks even, or within short drives, who will actually raise their hand and say, yes, I've got a bunch of records that I've had in my closet. I'd love to get rid of them. You want to come look at them? Score, right? That's a great way to go about it. And again, it's very local. It's not like you're going to have to drive across your state, drive many hours. So check out Nextdoor. It's a pretty cool app. If you don't already use it, you can download it. You put in your actual address. It'll sync you up with your own community. And again, a hyper local way to search for used records if you've never done so. So I highly recommend that. All right. So that's a few options as far as shopping for used records, looking for used records in the physical world. Let's talk about online, which there are a million choices online. But as it pertains to used records, it dwindles it down a little bit. First and foremost, I can't say this enough. Don't forget about your local shops. Keep in mind, just because you want to shop online, local and independent shops, a ton of them, mine included, have online websites where you can shop for used records. I actually don't sell a lot of used records on my website, but plenty of independent shops do. So keep in mind, even if it's not a local shop to you, you can still shop local by going to an independent shop's website that offers used vinyl. And again, the reason why that's the best place is because you can trust them, because you got to assume they know what they're doing. They're running a local business. They understand records. They're in it for the right reasons, and hopefully they're going to provide good inventory with the right grading and the right pricing and the right shipping. All those things that really matter when you're buying a record online, a used record online, right? So don't forget about your independent shops. There's a lot of great shops all over the nation, and regardless of where you are, they will ship to you if they sell used records online. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. From there, it runs the gamut. You can go to eBay. Tons of used records on eBay. I actually forget about eBay all the time. For some reason, I just don't inherently use it enough. Something I'm constantly trying to remind myself of. But you can go search for used records on eBay. The best way to do it is to put in, the name of the album and the artist and maybe a year, because that'll get you to a vintage pressing versus a new one. Got to have some knowledge there and understand what the differences are and know what you're buying, though. And again, and then you're taking a chance that eBay seller, whoever it may be and wherever they may be, that they know what they're selling, that they actually understand what it is, and they have an understanding of grading and pricing. So you're taking a chance on that. Definitely use feedback and ratings on sellers to understand if they have a reputation for being a good seller and if they've sold other records in the past. Same thing can be said for Discogs. If you don't use Discogs, that's an app and also a website, short for discography. Very useful tool, and also a great place to look for used records. It's the same thing as eBay. You're going to get sellers all over the country and all over the world who have records, and you need to find the ones that you can trust. You need to find the ones that have good ratings, that have good reviews, and have good sales history, because then that's what's going to give you the confidence to buy from them. And it's the same thing. Again, search for it by album and artist, and drill down by year, and find a pressing that you think, based on reviews, might be good. So eBay and Discogs are very similar in that they're just platforms. These are just people selling through these platforms. So I hear a lot of times people like, oh, I never buy on Discogs. Their albums suck. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Discogs has nothing to do with the albums. They're just facilitating the sale. It's just a platform, no different than eBay, and no different than the next one, which is Facebook Marketplace. This is kind of similar to what I was saying about Nextdoor, but Facebook Marketplace could work kind of offline and online because of the way so many people use Facebook Marketplace to do like a porch pickup type of thing. So you can get hyperlocal and do offline with Facebook Marketplace, but a lot of people will ship them as well. Similar to kind of what I was saying about estate sales, Facebook Marketplace in recent years has gotten really oversaturated with vinyl records. Again, just speaking about my experience in my area, to where if you see something great pop up on Facebook Marketplace and it's a desirable record or a collection of records, a lot of times it can be really overpriced. A lot of times people don't know what they have. So you have to be careful. You need to have good communication with the seller. You need to make sure the seller is properly identifying what they have, so you have an idea, especially if you're having it shipped blindly and you can't look at it first. Got to have confidence in that seller and make sure they understand what they have, and you can make a solid transaction there. If it's local pickup, and you're going to meet up or you're going to do a porch drop, the same kind of things apply. You just want to be careful about what you're buying. So beyond Facebook Marketplace, the last thing I'll mention in regards to online sales, because again, there's lots of these. I'm trying to just hit the tip of the iceberg here, but other social media platforms are out there, obviously, and I would be willing to bet you can go on just about any of them and find used records. That regardless if it's Instagram or if it's TikTok or if it's OfferUp is another one. There's a lot of buy and sell sites and a lot of social networks, and there are vinyl communities, YouTube included even, to where there are sales channels and there are individual sellers and there are shops who sell through those platforms. And so regardless of which social network or buy sell app you use, the same thing can be said that I was already mentioning on eBay and Discogs and Facebook Marketplace. It's all about trusting that seller, and it's all about you doing some due diligence and making sure that you're confident that that seller has any clue about what they have and what it is and what the condition of it is. Because when it comes to used records, so much comes down to condition, right? That's the biggest factor. And that's honestly the biggest benefit to shopping in person, to shopping in a physical world, is because you can actually look at the record. In a lot of cases, if it's a record store, you can actually go to a listening station and spin it and make sure that it actually sounds great, because you can only see so much with the eye. A lot of it comes down to what you hear, right? So that's a big benefit of shopping local, in the physical world. And that's the big thing when you're shopping online, is trying your best to understand what condition that record is in. Hopefully you can see photos. Hopefully you can, again, deal with communication in regards to the seller and ask them if they don't have enough photos, can you send more? Have you listened to these records? Can you tell me if they're scratched? What's the condition of the jackets? You can hopefully via that communication, again, build confidence that this person who's selling has a clue. Like, that's the biggest thing. And a lot of times they won't, and a lot of times people will tell you if they don't know records and they're popping them up on Facebook or they're popping them up on eBay because they're just trying to get rid of them. They may tell you, hey, as is, I don't know anything about these records. They look like they're in decent condition to me. Sometimes you just got to take a chance. That goes with anything when you're buying online, right? So again, it comes down to doing a little research and trying to understand if that person's sold before and if they have any idea. And at very least, just communicate with them, because that'll help you in a lot of ways. One other place, the last one I'll mention that again can work offline and online, is Craigslist. If you're not familiar with Craigslist, probably the longest standing buy sell marketplace out there. Similar to what I was saying about estate sales, thrift stores, and even some of the online sites, eBay. Craigslist can be completely hit or miss, but don't forget about it. It's been around a long time. A lot of people forget it's there, myself included, but you can find a lot of great deals on used records on Craigslist. There's a lot of people who still rely on that instead of Facebook, because maybe they're not a Facebook user, so they don't use Facebook Marketplace or know that that whole world exists. They still just get rid of their stuff on Craigslist. A lot of it can be local too. So like I mentioned, could be, in the physical world, you can go and actually meet up with someone in a public location, hopefully, and make a deal on some records or a record collection, or sometimes people will ship it to you. So again, all comes down to communication, all comes to that trust in the seller and having confidence in what you're buying. So, I think that comes into play so much more on the online side versus the offline side. So those are some of my places, my best places to buy used vinyl records. There's a lot more beyond that. Let me know what I missed. Let me know, if you don't mind sharing with the community where you have found great deals, or if you found great quality of throughout any of these places I mentioned, or anything I didn't mention. I'd love to hear some other tips and get some ideas myself, because I'm a record shopper too. Dig for vinyl all the time, whether it's in shops or online. So I'd love to hear, anything I haven't thought of as far as locations or platforms or tips and tricks to find good used records, because these days it's getting a little competitive because the market is hot and there's a lot of new collectors entering the market trying to figure out how to do this stuff, right? Because, even if all you've got in your local town is a Walmart or a Target, that gets pretty old pretty fast, because they've just got a small selection of records. And if you don't have a local record store, you're going to have to think outside the box and get creative in regards to some of these other places that I've mentioned. So hope that was helpful. Really appreciate you watching. I'm going to pop up some other videos here on the channel. I've got a ton of great content in regards to vinyl collecting. Check it out. Thanks as always for watching another episode of Talking About Records.